When life runs smoothly, we convince ourselves that this is who we are: calm, confident, capable. But ease doesn't demand anything from us. It never asks us to dig deeper, to stretch beyond what we already know. Tough situations, on the other hand, strip away the comfort and reveal what's left when the surface is gone. That's when we discover the parts of ourselves that would otherwise remain hidden. Think about the first time you faced something that truly challenged you. Maybe it was a setback at work, a personal loss, or a moment when everything seemed uncertain. At first, it felt like the ground had been pulled from under your feet. Yet looking back, wasn't it in that very moment that you found out you were stronger than you thought? Struggle has a way of showing us our capacity. We admire people who rise in difficult times, not because their lives were free of struggle, but precisely because they weren't. They are proof that it's not the situation that defines us, but the way we respond to it. Every tough situation becomes a mirror, reflecting not who we wish to be, but who we really are when things get hard. That mirror doesn't flatter us, but it tells the truth. The truth is, resilience doesn't come from avoiding challenges. It comes from walking through them. And though it feels uncomfortable, even painful, every test plants a seed. With every challenge, we add another layer of grit, another layer of perspective, another layer of strength. The very moments we wish away are the ones building the foundation we will stand on in the future. It's tempting to see tough situations as interruptions to the life we planned, but what if they are the very curriculum of the life we need? What if each obstacle is not a detour but the road itself? If we shifted our mindset to see every challenge as training, then the difficulties stop being enemies and start being instructors. They don't just happen to us, they happen for us. Tough situations also test what we value. When everything is stripped back, what remains? Sometimes it's a relationship, sometimes it's a principle, sometimes it's a dream. The storm clears away the trivial and leaves behind only what truly matters. And it's in holding on to those essentials that we discover clarity, even in chaos. And here's the paradox: the very things we resist the most are the ones that shape us the deepest. No one enjoys pain, uncertainty, or struggle in the moment. Yet when we look back, those are often the moments we're most grateful for. Because they are the moments that forced us to grow, to evolve, to step into a stronger version of ourselves that ease alone could never have created. That is why tough situations matter. They are not random punishments, they are invitations. They are the universe's way of asking us, how much do you really believe in yourself? How far are you willing to go? How strong are you willing to become? And the answer to those questions is never revealed when life is easy. It is only revealed when we are tested. Two people can stand in front of the same storm, facing the same conditions, yet their experiences will be completely different. One sees nothing but destruction and despair, the other sees a chance to rebuild stronger than before. The storm is the same, what changes everything is perspective. Perspective is the lens through which we interpret reality, and that interpretation is often more powerful than reality itself. When we face a challenge, our instinct is often to label it good, bad, unfair, overwhelming. But what if we paused before labeling? What if instead of saying, "This is happening to me," we asked, "What is this giving me?" That shift doesn't remove the pain or the difficulty, but it opens the door to possibility. A challenge can either be a wall that stops us or a doorway that invites us forward. And the choice lies in the frame we use. History is full of people who endured circumstances that would have broken most, yet their perspective allowed them to turn pain into progress. They didn't see failure as the end, but as feedback. They didn't see hardship as cruelty, but as preparation. What gave them strength was not that their challenges were lighter, but that their lens was different. Perspective became their hidden advantage. Think of a mountain climber staring up at the peak. To some, the sight of the steep slopes is overwhelming, a reminder of how far there is to go. To others, the same sight is inspiring, proof of what's possible. The mountain hasn't changed, only the meaning they've given it, and it is that meaning that fuels whether they take the first step or give up before they begin. We often underestimate how much our words shape our perspective. Saying, "I'm stuck," narrows our options, but saying, "I'm learning," keeps the door open. Saying, "This is the end," creates despair, but saying, "This is the beginning of something new," sparks hope. Words are not just descriptions, they are instructions to the brain on how to experience the challenge. Change your words, and you change your perspective. Perspective also determines the size of the challenge itself. A problem that feels huge today can feel small tomorrow when compared to something greater. That's why perspective grows when we zoom out. Suddenly, what seemed unbearable becomes manageable when placed in the context of a bigger picture. It's not that the problem disappeared, it's that its weight shifted in relation to everything else. Children often see obstacles as games, turning even struggles into adventures. That playful perspective transforms frustration into curiosity. Somewhere along the way, as adults, we lose that ability and begin treating every obstacle as a crisis. But the truth is we can reclaim that childlike lens. By asking, "What can I discover here?" rather than, "Why is this happening to me?" we regain a sense of agency in the face of difficulty. And when perspective shifts, so does resilience. Because resilience isn't only about enduring hardship, it's about interpreting hardship in a way that empowers us instead of diminishes us. Perspective is the hidden filter that decides whether we crumble or whether we rise. And though we can't always control the challenge, we always have the power to choose the frame through which we see it. We are wired to avoid discomfort. From the moment we feel pain, our instinct is to pull away, to retreat to safety. Yet the irony is that every form of growth, physical, mental, emotional, requires discomfort. A muscle doesn't get stronger without resistance. A mind doesn't get sharper without challenge. A spirit doesn't get deeper without struggle. Discomfort is not a signal to stop, it is the signal that growth is happening. Think of an athlete training in the gym. The weight feels heavy, the muscles ache, the body trembles. But every rep, every drop of sweat is not punishment, it is preparation. The pain is not evidence of weakness, but evidence that the body is adapting. The same is true for the mind. When we step in situations that stretch us, the unease we feel is simply the mind lifting its own version of weights. Most people wait for a crisis before they test themselves, but the strongest minds are built long before the storm arrives. They are built by deliberately choosing discomfort in small ways every day. Waking up earlier than you want to, taking on a project that scares you, starting a conversation that feels awkward. Each choice is training. These small, intentional doses of discomfort build the resilience needed when life delivers the big tests. Discomfort also teaches humility. When everything feels easy, we convince ourselves we're in control. But the moment discomfort shows up, we realize how much more there is to learn, how much more room there is to grow. This humility is not weakness, it's awareness. And awareness is the first step towards strength. By embracing discomfort, we acknowledge that growth is a lifelong process, not a finished product. What separates those who thrive from those who crumble is not the absence of discomfort, but their relationship to it. Some see it as an enemy and avoid it at all costs. Others see it as a teacher and lean in with curiosity. The discomfort is the same, the interpretation is what differs. One path leads to fragility, the other to resilience. Even in nature, discomfort is the engine of transformation. A seed must crack before it becomes a tree. A caterpillar must struggle in its cocoon before it can fly as a butterfly. Without pressure, there is no progress. Without resistance, there is no release. Every living thing is shaped by discomfort, and we are no different. When we run from discomfort, we rob ourselves of the very training we need to withstand life's inevitable storms. It's like showing up to a marathon without ever running a mile. The discomfort we avoid today is the resilience we will wish we had tomorrow. By choosing discomfort now, we are not making life harder, we are making ourselves harder to break. Discomfort is not a punishment but a practice. It is the rehearsal ground where resilience is born, the training field where strength takes root. And while it rarely feels good in the moment, it always leaves us stronger than before, prepared for the challenges that wait on the horizon. We often imagine mental strength as something dramatic, a sudden surge of courage in the middle of crisis. But true strength doesn't appear out of nowhere. Just as a bodybuilder doesn't gain power from lifting a weight once, the mind doesn't grow resilient from a single moment of bravery. Mental strength is built slowly, deliberately, through the quiet repetition of small habits that no one else sees. Consider how an athlete trains. The routine may look ordinary, push-ups, runs, stretches, but the magic is not in the intensity of a single workout. It's in the consistency across weeks, months, years. The same is true for the mind. A 5-minute meditation, a daily practice of gratitude, even pausing to take a deep breath in the middle of stress. These are the mental push-ups that shape resilience. Habits are powerful because they compound. One act may feel insignificant, but repeated daily, it becomes a foundation. Writing 1 page a day doesn't seem like much, yet in a year it becomes a book. Choosing patience once may not change your life, but choosing patience every day rewires how you respond under pressure. Small acts accumulate into character, and character is what carries us in tough situations. The brain thrives on patterns. Each time we repeat a small act of discipline, we reinforce a pathway in the mind. Over time, those pathways become highways, automatic responses that serve us when challenges hit. When pressure mounts, we don't have to invent strength. We simply fall back on the habits we've already built. That is why discipline in the small things is preparation for the big things. Patience is the quiet partner of habit. Just as muscles need time to grow, the mind needs time to adapt. Too often, people abandon their habits because they don't see immediate results. But resilience doesn't reveal itself in days, it reveals itself in seasons. The patience to keep practicing, even when results are invisible, is itself a sign of mental strength in action. Habits also anchor us in uncertainty. When life feels chaotic, routines provide stability. A morning ritual, a journaling practice, or even the simple act of walking at the same time each day creates order in the middle of disorder. That order becomes a safe ground to stand on, reminding us that while we can't control everything, we can control something. Small daily habits are also reminders of identity. Each choice says, this is who I am. Every time we show up for ourselves, even in a small way, we reinforce the belief that we are resilient, capable, disciplined. Over time, the identity becomes stronger than the circumstance. The mind no longer asks, can I handle this? But affirms, I am someone who handles this. It is in these small, repeated actions that mental strength quietly takes root. Not in the spotlight, not in the grand gestures, but in the unseen moments of consistency, repetition, and patience that accumulate until one day we realize the mind has become unshakable. Fear is often painted as the enemy, something to conquer, silence, or eliminate. But fear is not proof of weakness. It's proof that we care. We don't feel fear about things that are meaningless. We feel it when something is important, when the stakes are real, when what's in front of us matters deeply. Fear is a signal, and like any signal, its purpose is not to stop us but to guide us. Uncertainty works the same way. We crave control, but life refuses to give it to us. The unknown feels threatening because it strips away our sense of predictability. Yet if we step back, uncertainty is also the space where possibility lives. Every breakthrough, every achievement, every transformation begins in the unknown. Without uncertainty, nothing new could ever emerge. Imagine standing on a stage, heart racing, palms sweating. The body interprets this as danger, but in reality, what's happening is that the mind recognizes significance. The fear isn't saying, don't do this. It's saying, this matters. If we reframe fear as a compass pointing toward what's meaningful, then its presence becomes less of a barrier and more of a guide. Fear and uncertainty both magnify attention. They force us to notice what we might otherwise ignore. A leader making a risky decision, a parent stepping into the unknown, an artist sharing vulnerable work, all feel the sharpness of fear. But that sharpness is focus. It highlights what is truly at stake, and in doing so, it shows us where our growth is waiting. When we try to eliminate fear, we rob ourselves of that guidance. The goal is not to be fearless, it is to be courageous in the presence of fear. Courage is not the absence of trembling, it is the decision to move forward despite it. When we shift our relationship with fear from enemy to ally, we transform it from a prison guard into a coach. Uncertainty, too, can be reframed as space for creativity. In rigid certainty, there is no room for imagination. But in the unknown, the mind is forced to stretch, to invent, to adapt. Uncertainty asks us to trade comfort for discovery. It invites us into a state where failure is possible, but so is growth. And it is in that stretch that resilience is formed. Every person who has achieved something meaningful has walked hand in hand with fear and uncertainty. They didn't wait for those feelings to disappear before moving, they moved with them. The fear never vanished, the uncertainty never dissolved. But the meaning they pursued was greater than the discomfort of those emotions. Fear and uncertainty will always walk beside us, but their presence is not a curse. They are signals, reminders, and guides pointing us to the very places where our growth and purpose reside. They don't show up to stop us. They show up to show us what matters most. The loudest voice we ever hear is not from the outside world. It's the one inside our own head. That voice narrates our experiences, explains our struggles, and defines our identity. When challenges arrive, it is not just the event itself that determines our endurance, but the story we tell ourselves about it. The inner dialogue becomes either our greatest ally or our most persistent enemy. Consider how two people can face the same setback. One says, I failed, so I must not be good enough. The other says, I failed, so I must have found one more way that doesn't work. The outcome is identical, but the story is different. And that difference shapes whether the person gives up or tries again. The event did not decide their resilience, their dialogue did. Words are not harmless. The brain listens closely to the language we use. When we repeat phrases like, I can't handle this, or this is impossible, we train the mind to believe them. Over time, those words become self-fulfilling prophecies. But the opposite is also true. Repeating, I can try, I can learn, or one step at a time, wires the mind toward persistence. The dialogue we feed ourselves creates the lens through which we face hardship. In high-pressure moments, inner dialogue is often the difference between panic and composure. Athletes, soldiers, leaders, they all practice self, talk as deliberately as they practice their craft. A steady phrase repeated in the storm calms the nervous system and focuses the mind. The challenge does not disappear, but the story becomes, I am prepared for this. And that story carries them forward. Our inner dialogue is also shaped by the past voices we've internalized. Sometimes without realizing it, we repeat the doubts others once spoke to us. Old criticisms echo as if they were our own thoughts. Training the inner dialogue means becoming aware of those echoes and deciding which voices are allowed to stay. We can't always silence them, but we can choose to replace them with words that strengthen rather than weaken. Inner dialogue is not about pretending everything is easy or ignoring reality. It is about choosing language that gives us the courage to continue. Saying, this is hard, acknowledges truth, but pairing it with, I can keep going, changes the meaning. It reframes hardship not as an end but as a challenge to rise to. That single adjustment in dialogue can shift despair into determination. When practiced daily, healthy inner dialogue becomes automatic. It no longer requires effort to remind yourself, I can figure this out, because it has become the default response. Just as habits shape the body, repeated dialogue shapes the mind. In moments of crisis, the words surface on their own, providing strength without conscious thought. The story we tell ourselves is not background noise. It is the script we live by. Every challenge is filtered through that script, and endurance is built or broken depending on what the story says. The dialogue inside is where resilience begins, and it is the foundation of how far we can go when the world outside tests us. When life becomes overwhelming, logic often isn't enough to keep us steady. Numbers, plans, and strategies can only take us so far. What truly anchors us in the middle of chaos is purpose. A reason to keep moving that stretches beyond personal comfort. Why, bigger than ourselves, becomes the ground we stand on when everything else feels uncertain. Purpose transforms suffering. Pain without meaning feels unbearable, but pain with meaning becomes endurable. Think of a parent working exhausting hours to provide for their child. The fatigue is real, the stress is heavy, yet they persist because the why makes the hardship worth it. The circumstances don't change, but the presence of purpose changes how the circumstances are carried. In moments of crisis, purpose acts like a compass. Fear, doubt, and exhaustion pull us in every direction, but purpose points us back to true north. It doesn't erase the storm, but it reminds us why we must walk through it. With a clear why, the question shifts from, can I survive this, to how can I serve the reason I started in the first place? Purpose also creates resilience by making the struggle personal. When we attach our efforts to something or someone we deeply care about, failure is no longer just about us. It's about the mission we are serving. That sense of responsibility fuels a deeper strength, one that doesn't collapse when the weight becomes heavy. Purpose moves us from self-preservation to contribution. Many people break not because they are weak, but because their struggle feels meaningless. The moment we find a greater cause, even the hardest journey becomes bearable. Soldiers endure the battlefield not for medals, but for the brother or sister beside them. Activists withstand years of opposition not for recognition, but for the vision of change they believe in. The purpose redefines the suffering. Purpose is also the bridge between the present and the future. In the darkest nights, when nothing seems certain, purpose whispers that today's pain is serving tomorrow's possibility. It connects hardship to hope. Without that bridge, difficulty feels endless. With it, difficulty becomes part of a story that is still unfolding. It's important to remember that purpose doesn't have to be grand to be powerful. It can be as simple as caring for a family member, building a craft, or leaving the world a little better than we found it. What matters is not the scale of the purpose, but the depth of the connection we feel to it. Even the smallest why can steady us in the largest storm. When storms come, what often determines who stands and who falls is not strength alone, but the presence of a reason that runs deeper than fear. Purpose doesn't remove the hardship, but it gives us something solid to hold on to while the winds rage around us. And in holding on, we discover the endurance we didn't know we had. Life rarely asks for our permission before it delivers its challenges. Accidents happen, opportunities vanish, people disappoint us, and circumstances shift without warning. In those moments, we often feel powerless because we cannot control the event itself. Yet hidden inside every situation is a space no one else can touch, the freedom to decide how we will respond. That choice of response is where true power lies. Two people can face the same setback, one becomes bitter and stuck, while the other becomes wiser and stronger. The difference is not in the situation, but in the response. Our response is the brushstroke that paints meaning on the canvas of adversity, turning pain into either a prison or a platform. When we react on impulse, we hand over control to the circumstance. Anger, fear, or despair take the wheel, and we follow wherever they lead. But when we pause, even briefly, we reclaim that control. A single breath between what happens and what we do next can be the difference between escalating chaos and creating clarity. That pause is where response is born. History shows countless examples of this principle. Leaders who chose calm in the face of panic, communities that chose solidarity instead of division, individuals who chose perseverance instead of surrender. The events around them were harsh, often unfair, but their responses created ripples that reshaped what followed. The power of response is not just personal, it is collective. Choosing how to respond does not mean pretending everything is fine. It means acknowledging reality and then deciding what to do with it. We cannot erase loss, but we can choose whether to honor it with despair or with purpose. We cannot undo injustice, but we can choose whether to meet it with silence or with action. The event sets the stage, but the response writes the script. Our responses also shape our identity. Each choice builds a track record of who we are becoming. Respond with courage enough times, and courage becomes part of you. Respond with patience often enough, and patience becomes natural. Over time, our consistent responses carve out character, and that character becomes the foundation we lean on when the next storm arrives. Even in the smallest moments, the choice of response matters. A difficult conversation, a sudden disappointment, a mistake at work, each one is training for the larger tests ahead. By practicing intentional responses in the everyday, we prepare ourselves to choose wisely when the stakes are higher. Strength in big moments is built in the small ones. The truth is that we may never control what life delivers to us, but the freedom to choose our response will always remain. That freedom is the one thing no circumstance can take, and it is in exercising it that we discover the resilience, wisdom, and strength hidden within us.